Batu, Barada, Nikto.
You must remember those words.
Gordon's alive.
You know what the Turing test is?
I know Kung Fu.
Dead or alive, you are coming with me.
My God, it's full of stars.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Stories Out Time and Space. I'm your regular host, Scott Weatherly, and as always, I'm joined by Julian Darius. Julian, how are you doing? You okay?
I'm doing great, and I've got a pop-up penis to prove it.
A big blue member. I could do that. Yeah, I've got a big blue member, bruv. Yes, we are talking.
Mr. Monroe, Mr. Monroe.
Yeah. That was too posh. It's Mr. Monroe, Mr. Monroe.
Yeah, I can't tell the difference. You know,
We are talking about episode 3 of season 2 of Black Mirror, the Waldo moment. A failed comedian who voices a popular cartoon bear named Waldo finds himself mixing in politics when TV executives want Waldo to run for office. So, Julian, first thoughts then on the Waldo moment.
I didn't remember this all that fondly from the past. I mean, I remembered it well when I thought of it, but I didn't like see the title and go like, "Oh yeah, that's that episode." But once I got into it, I remembered it pretty well, and I really like it. I do think it gets better as time goes on, which again, I tend to be somebody who likes the endings more than beginnings.
Mm-hmm.
A good ending will really get me, and this is a good ending that makes me want more. So for me, this is a very strong episode.
Yeah, it's very of its time. I think there's a 2000,
Yeah.
like an early 2010s that this fits into, like, kind of well. I do like the concept of it, and I like some of the questions this asks. Again, there's like a bit like we called that with obviously the last episode. We have called that. There's some logistical things about voting for a blue cartoon bear and how the electoral system works, which sort of is a bit silly, but I'm willing to accept it as
Poetic license.
I'm willing to accept that for this idea of people getting behind a character that can voice their concerns or that can be the voice of the people, but in that kind of way, which is interesting. And it made me think about other characters. Not that obviously we haven't had any run for public office, but I do want to talk about something that's mentioned in this. But characters that become a thing of themselves in pop culture, where they take on a role that's sort of slightly sometimes beyond that of their TV show or that sort of appearance. They usually die off quite quickly, but it does happen, this sort of idea of these characters. So I do find it kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting that this came out in 2013.
Yeah.
It reminded me when I first saw it of Bulworth, which is a movie about a senator who played by Warren Beatty, who runs for office and basically goes crazy and, tells people off and finds that he, much like this, doesn't, he wins a seat. He becomes a write-in candidate for president. And actually, this was seen as a sort of liberal movie, very very safe, and he reflected apathy among the voting public and just calls things out as safe, and and also the sort of ways in which politicians have to perform and have to be acceptable and get donations, and all of that was parody. So this it sort of reminded me of that. In that case, like a candidate is just telling it like it is. Okay, but now, of course, the problem is Donald Trump,
Hmm.
because 2013 was pre-Trump. I mean, he was already an idiot on the national
Yeah.
stage, with his birth certificate stuff. But 2016, he runs and he is very much like this, right? I mean, he's basically a cartoon bear, and he basically just says, "All of you are corrupt. All of you are idiots. My penis is awesome." He literally talked about his penis in a debate. I mean, shit you're not supposed to do. And people loved him because, in much the same way, because he was, he would say a few things about policy. If anything, Waldo is more policy heavy, and that's saying a lot,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
like Waldo knows nothing. And this is my objection to Trump, and but also to some of these stories, is like Waldo's a bomb thrower. Waldo, like you said, he talks about people's issues or whatever. No, I don't think he talks about anybody's issues. I think he's just a bomb thrower who says all of you guys are disgusting and bad. And I find myself agreeing with Mr. Monroe. When he says, "No, the system built the roads." Yeah, that's true.
But
You're
but
also a conservative, and I hate that guy. What? Go ahead.
no, you're right. I wanted to call this out actually because you're right. You said you enjoy. This is this is getting back to the success of Black Mirror,
Yeah.
because it does what I like about this episode is it makes it does a really good job of making Waldo funny, and when he's going around going like Mr. Monroe, and he's sort of chasing him down and doing all that stuff, you find it funny. The people find it funny. You are a member of the public going, yeah, this blue bear's funny, and he's made the bit where he has he does that cave where Mr. The MP Liam Monroe comes in, and the bear's there to interview him, and he's like, oh, this is a prank. Like by this point we'd already had Ali G.
Oh yeah, sure.
Sacha Baron Cohen's character Ali G had already done this.
Mm-hmm.
And was doing a similar thing where they'd bring in a very sort of sensible politician and then have this character interview them, but like acting dumb and making them feel making them do uncomfortable things. And Sacha Baron Cohen's made a bit of a career out of doing this with other things. But what I find
Brilliant
interesting
stuff,
is,
by the way. I mean,
yeah, early Ali G,
yeah.
early Ali
And
G,
the Ali G show is great. Yeah.
yeah, it's really yeah. A lot of stuff, but it was very satirical. Like it's fantastic satire, and I like the fact that this tries for the same thing, goes for the same thing, but then goes for the 1-2 punch of giving you that and going like, yeah, you like Waldo, don't you? You like Waldo, but makes you feel a bit silly about it, and then actually has the Conservative MP be the one that stands up and says, well, yeah, but we've got to take this serious because, as you say, this is the system that built our roads. This is the system that's actually given us these institutions that have lasted like centuries. It's made the country what it is. Yeah, like that's what democracy is. And you're like you say, and he calls out and says, all you're doing is just throwing bombs. And so you find yourself in this awkward position where you are like, yeah, Waldo's funny, and it is voicing, giving voice to my frustration. But the MP's sort of got a point, and I'm sort of like torn between the two. And I love the fact that it makes me feel uncomfortable in that way, like other Black Mirror episodes have done.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with what you're saying. And I find myself obviously could not disagree more strongly with Monroe's politics. But he is objectively correct. I mean, he is objectively who I would vote for in that race. And that's because, like it's hard not to like Waldo, right? I don't think he's actually that funny, but I don't think his jokes are actually at all funny. But I think that the funniness of having him in the background going, Mr. Monroe, pay attention to me, Mr. Monroe, is and his irreverence I mean, he's really just filling the air with dumb things to say, right? Which is a lot of what wild comedians do,
Mm,
right? When you actually like watch it again and you realize, oh, that guy is just being wild. He's not actually saying anything insightful or really that funny. They're just playing a role that's funny because of the energy they're bringing to it. I think he's that kind of comedian, and not even the best at it. But it's the situations that are really shocking and funny. But it's hard not to like seeing him embarrass these candidates
mm.
and his rage, especially at um, the
But
Labor Party candidate
yeah,
is, justified. But you also feel a little sad for her. But then, I am so over these stupid protest candidates. I'm so over this idea of like, let's try something different. I'm going to be young and vote for a libertarian. Well, really, why? What are the positions there for? I mean, and we have talked about, as we're both, liberal people, about the failure of, in your country, the Labor Party to really articulate a case and
mm.
to really say, yeah, I'm in favor of, the Tories do such a good job, the Republicans do such a good job at saying, this is what I'm in favor of. And it's mostly monstrous stuff, right?
Yeah,
In both of our countries, just flat out horror show monstrous stuff. But then the Democrats and the Labor Party do such a shitty job of saying, the obvious answer to this is no, Waldo. We're not all idiots. There are these things that I believe in. We can build roads and also help people who are drug addicts, which
mm.
apparently Mr. Monroe thinks should be left to die, right? That they're criminals. I don't want to live in a country without that kind of compassion. And I believe in a better country and in a government that's able to help its citizens. And that is what I'm up here standing for. You're up here making dick jokes, and he's up here condemning people to death because they made a mistake. I'd like to maybe offer a difference that is passionate, like the dog, like the talking bear, right? But
Yeah.
also serious on policy, or in the real world, at least, like Monroe and
I,
Grant.
yeah, and that's a really good point because I think the Labour MP, Chloe Price, is the character. She becomes a bit of a cipher throughout towards the end of the episode where like she they set her up, but like when there's that debate, isn't there? They have that sort of the on-screen debate later on, and they completely write off the Lib Dems, which is perfectly reasonable at this point. But she never. It's Monroe that sort of says these things, and when she gets her voice, she sort of agrees with him. But like you say, she isn't able to articulate. But here's the benefit of, they go, oh, this is a conservative. That's her moment, as you say. Like there should be a moment. She's the one that should stand up and say, well, you've had Liam Munro as the MP here for the last however long, and he talks about the roads, but I also know that this and this has happened, and that I understand that in this constituents we haven't had increase in employment, or we've had this problem, and I want to do something about that, and that's so whilst Waldo is right to call this out, give me a chance, that sort of thing, and she doesn't, and that's where I think it's a bit like it becomes either chaos or the old is what is the problem. It's this thing of anarchy or the Conservatives is sort of which that's the cases it's trying to make. But again, there's no sort of like I think Chloe Price, the character, could be really interesting to be that point in the middle that says, well, there is actually a better way that isn't a blue bear and this other thing.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, and she's playing Gwendolyn Harris as the Labor candidate,
Oh yeah,
and
sorry, that's
you're
this the actress, isn't it? Chloe Price. Apologies.
yeah,
Yeah.
no worries. Yeah, but I think you're right, and I think you're exactly right in that debate is that moment where she could say, exactly what we've said. But I mean, there is this weird failure on the part of both the Democratic and the Labor Party, and so it's easy to sympathize with Waldo, right? It's easy to be amused by his antics. I mean, but we live in this post-Trump, you know, era, I guess, in which, I'm convinced, and I think it's very clear that what Trump did was said, it doesn't matter if I know anything about policy. What matters is if I'm entertaining, right? My
Mm,
ratings matter. And all I need is a slim majority. I don't even need that. I need the people who show up. And who's going to show up to vote for Mr. Monroe or
yeah.
for this lackluster Labor candidate, right? I mean, I'll get people to show up for me because I'm on stage and I'm outrageous and I'm talking about my penis in a debate.
Mm,
I mean, even the shit that Trump said as president seemed very calculated to get coverage.
oh
Um,
yeah.
and even if it would lose him votes, it would, didn't appeal to his constituents. You know, I mean, he knew it was outrageous and it would get coverage. That seems very much like Waldo, and very much like, I mean, I have talked with a lot of people who voted for Trump in 2016, and the majority of them do have some version of I just think both parties are corrupt and boring, and he's a monkey wrench in the machine.
Mm,
Okay, well, so is watching this post-fascist takeover of my country and an attempted coup, it's hard to feel maybe as charitable toward Waldo or Bulworth, who at least articulates a message, but certainly Waldo, as I might.
no, I think that's the point. Is I think one of the things about this is time has progressed. We've gone through events in history that have shown up. You've talked about Trump. We've had Boris Johnson in a very sort of similar vein. We've also gone through Brexit. I mean, like, if you were to have Waldo now, well, I mean, we are both of us. I think, I definitely feel that the country's frustration is there, and Labour on a positive track. But you're right; they seem unable to carry that goodwill into something tangible and robust. And there's almost like a fear, like it's the left, or let's call them the left for the Democrats or the Labour Party, have to be seen to be better than the other side. Like, I'll give you a good example. So recently, there were some like posters done by the Labour Party, and they were factual, but basically they were giving quotes from several MPs on the Tory side, Matt Hancock and Rishi Sunak and a few others. And then basically we're like, this is who's running the government. This is what they actually think of you. And it was a bit of a mudslinging kind of thing. And people came out and were like, we thought you were better than that. How dare you, the Labour Party, do this? But there's like, well,
Why? I mean, wasn't it using Sunak's quotes? I mean,
yeah, but it was still that
yeah.
very much like, they could be, they are scumbags sort of kind of thing. It was pointing out this politics. But if the right did that, they'd just go, oh, that's what they do.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that that's very much where this frustration comes from, of like, you say that, the Democrats and and Labour sort of struggle to articulate this case. It's because they are hampered by the way in which they can articulate it. Every now and then you get an MP, and I feel that they, if let loose, they could do it. I actually think, whilst I think Starmer over here is the smooth, face of Labour. Like, he's very sort of he's central, centre left rather than left. Because they're trying to gather that more centrist audience. But then you've got his deputy, Angela Rayner, who I am sure if she was in charge would just be rip-roaring through people with very sort of like left-leaning policies. And you sort of think, yeah, let's just do it. But we don't forget that this country, although frustrated, doesn't trust change in that way. We're a very sort of, I think, selfish and this is the part of it, isn't it? Like we always wish to complain. And I think one of the interesting things about this episode is in that debate, the character Waldo, or the comedian Jamie Salter, he throws in this thing about you're no good, and you're just career MP, and you're no good, blah blah. But one of the things, and that's what people do, they go, oh, you're rubbish, and we do no. I'm not doing no different. I'm not coming up with an alternative. I'm not saying here's the better way, or we need to follow these policies, or do this. Like, I'm not an MP, but that's the thing, is that there's a frustration and a voice coming from the people, and as you say, that's what Waldo is. He's a grenade launcher. But like you say, it's quite clear, and I think it'd be more interesting if they actually pointed out, like, people are just responding to the noise, not to the quality of what's being said.
Yeah,
and that's true.
It's interesting that this is an episode that talks about democracy, right?
Yeah.
Which, obviously we've had a lot of conversations about as we've repressed voting rights and rolled back the Voting Rights Act and things like this over here in the States, and I know the Tories over there have done some of the same things.
We did the same. Yeah.
I mean, it's just disgusting stuff. But as we've had these conversations about democracy, here's an episode that is addressing democracy. And yet its standpoint on democracy is basically that people are bored and they will go along with a blue bear if he, curses and is mildly entertaining. And really, and, I mean, I guess that's, I mean, to me, that is the proof that, well, there's something fundamentally wrong with democracy, that, people will go along with whoever is more entertaining. It becomes about ratings. It becomes about who got the zinger in the debate, right? And, everybody just says, well, they both lie. I don't know whether an explosion of building more prisons is needed or we need less. They had a debate about that. I don't know, but I know, Ronald Reagan got that zinger off, so I'm going to vote for him, and the economy's not great under Carter. And, I mean, any analysis is, by, intelligent people, then gets condemned as, well, that's just an elite, that's a talking head. I mean, especially in the last decade and a half. And we're just in Waldo Town. And to me, Waldo Town is not a democracy either.
No, well, I think this is the thing. I'll use the Brexit campaign as a good example of this. That they came up with all these slogans. They had a big red bus that had, NHS would get 356 million, a day or a week or a month, whatever it was.
They're still waiting,
They're still waiting. Oh yeah. There's a check yet to be signed. But there's all these other things about, the Europe needs us more than we need them, and then we'll gain this, and we'll have sovereignty, and we'll have rights on our borders, and blah blah blah. And the moment that was all the spiel that was given, like Britain is a power in the world, and we should believe in our country, and that becomes the problem. You should believe in your country, because the moment you then step up with a dose of realism that says, well, yeah, we'll have control of our border, but a border has two sides. And so, we're just basically, the nice arrangements we have currently becomes antagonistic, because we're then actually acknowledging that there's two sides to a border and they've both got to work. And, you think we're needed because Germany wants to sell us some of its BMWs. It'll still do that. But now it doesn't have to follow the rules that it followed before, in both performance and in trade, and you'll find we're going to get hammered and all these things. And we did. But if you were to point any of that out, you became branded as Project Fear, that you don't believe in the strength of Britain. You are the negative. And that was the problem, isn't it? Like, that's what you're saying, it's not a democracy, because it's not laying out the facts. It's not laying out a pros and cons case. Spin is the worst thing that happened to politics. because everything becomes about spin. How can you make this a positive message? How can you make this sound like, the right way for the country because you are British and proud, and well, Winston Churchill would have voted to leave the EU and all that kind of crap. And that's as you say, that's the Waldo, that's the noise, that's the and that's where democracy falls down, because people get emotive rather than objective.
Yeah, and let's be clear, Winston Churchill also would have voted to kill as many Irish as possible.
Yeah,
But yeah, no, I know you're right. And, I mean, it reminds me over here of like, Trump saying, well, America's the greatest. And, I mean, as he's busy demolishing everything that was great about the country and spitting on our values and dismantling the international systems that we should be proud of. But talking America up in the same way that parallel to the Brexit thing, but it's not very sexy to say, look, we want wages to go up here. That means we're probably not going to be doing manufacturing that doesn't make sense to do at $15 to $20 an hour. I mean, it doesn't make sense to do that stuff here. We also are capitalists, and we don't necessarily want that stuff done here. Let another country do it, and it's going to be a good trading partner and all that. Demonizing them isn't going to do you any good. And if China's going to be a bigger GDP than us, then it's going to happen. And we want to be friends with China when that does happen, and to be on good relations so we continue to have pull. And we need to think about what a China number one GDP world looks like, and make strategic steps so that when that happens, we're on the best footing. Then you go back to Trump and he says, you don't believe in America. The only reason China's winning is because we have politicians who sold us out, and Joe Schmo doesn't know shit about shit and says, that sounds rah, that sounds good. There's nothing this country can do. We're the best. Okay, well, good luck with
that's
that.
Where,
right?
we can't give
400 million people. You're somehow beating a country of more than 1 billion. And you think that's going to last forever, brother?
But this comes down to this idea of what is it, selling Thanksgiving to the turkey, isn't it? It's sort of like, well, yeah. Britain could be amazing, but you want us to pay you too much, so we can't compete with China or India or any of those other massively up and coming economies. So you're kind of dragging us down, so you should really take a pay cut and work more hours. So or as they did in this country, they just, as Liz Truss came out and basically she actually stated the English workers are lazy. The reason that we can't compete on the world stage is because British workers are lazy. That was Liz Truss's clear statement.
So patriotic.
Yeah. Salute them. And that's the thing, but you don't believe hard enough, or you're not working hard enough. And I think this is where, again, like the rhetoric then becomes emotional, doesn't it? But I do wonder if we are sort of moving past that in a weird way, especially in this country, because one of the things that you guys have had, which I think is fascinating, is the difference in our political system. You guys vote in a president, right? So you vote in an individual, and that individual gets 4 years, regardless. They can go off and do all kinds of depraved things with all kinds of people, or sell out classified documents and still get away with it. It's amazing. In this country, we change prime ministers more than I change socks, apparently. And then but the parties is what we voted in. We didn't vote in an individual. We voted in a majority party.
Well, it's the difference between a parliamentary system.
Exactly,
and,
yeah. But unfortunately though, what we have is first past the post. So the majority, not the majority, it's the majority single party, and becomes the ruling party. And you go, yeah, all right, well, you might have got 36%, but that still means that that still means that 64% didn't vote for you, but they were split across a whole bunch of other parties, and Labour got another 30%, or you got, so you beat them by 6%, but that still means that only 66% voted for those two parties. The rest is split across other things. So this is where we need proportional representation.
But then you look at what happens in a like New Zealand went from a first past the post system to a coalition system, and then you have the equivalent of the of Labor getting together with UKIP, just to get a coalition together. I mean, it happened recently in Israel before it was, overturned by the fascists there, fascist war criminal. So yeah, I mean, and that has its own problem, right? Where suddenly, like in that kind of system, suddenly UKIP or the Lib Dems become the kingmaker, and have way outside
things over the edge.
I mean, the Irish, have played that role, in your politics.
Yeah, well, the DUP has done it, but also the Lib Dems did it. I mean, the only reason that David Cameron was able to hold on to power in 2010 when he was elected and stuff was because he formed a coalition government we had a hung parliament, and they formed a coalition with the Lib Dems. So yeah, it can be a dicey area to go with, but I don't know. It's just that thing. But I think proportional representation is the way to go. But I think there's different ways. Yeah. I think party politics is the problem. I don't mind saying that party politics becomes the problem because then you are stuck in the party line. Like you could be a Labour or Conservative. Let's use the villains for this purpose. But you could be a Conservative MP, and you do agree that actually the Conservative monetary policy is what I want to vote for. I believe that we should be more conservative in our approach to our budgets and our deficit or whatever, right? And I believe in it because of this, this, and this. Cool. All right, fine. That's your belief.
Yeah.
You have a conservative leaning when it comes to economics. Right. Now we're going to talk about benefits for the poor, distribution of the NHS, and LGBTQ rights. How do you feel about those? Well, I'm happy to actually. I think we should increase benefits by maybe not 30% that you're saying. Let's talk about 20% maybe. And I think you're right. We need to talk about how we distribute money to the NHS. And I'm fully in support of the LGBTQ rights. Cool.
You're basically describing my politics, by the way. And I consider myself a liberal.
Yeah, but then that person steps up and is like, "Cool. How are you going to vote? Oh, I'm voting against all of those things because that's the party line."
Exactly.
And that's the problem.
Because I need to get the support of my party to get reelected.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's where we sort of fall down. And I know it's a lot complicated because then it's sort of like but being tied to party politics isn't true democracy because then you've got the whip. In this country, we have this thing called the whip. Have you? Yeah, and you can, if you don't agree with the party, you can have the whip. It's pulled, and it's very dangerous because then you are no longer supported by that party. We've had several MPs have that happen to them. And so I just feel that you aren't, it becomes a block. And in fact, that's where it becomes a bit ridiculous. And that's where I can see this frustration. So going back to like Waldo, this idea of saying to the career MP or whatever, going like, you're just a show, like you don't matter. You sitting here and saying these lines doesn't matter because all you're doing is trotting out the party line. I want to know what you think. So when they have the Labour MP at the start of the episode saying like, why do you want to become an MP? And you're like, well, I want to do good for people. I want to do better. And you go, oh, cool, but you're still a Labour MP. And whilst I will, if I was to vote in party politics, I'm happy to say I vote Labour. But that doesn't mean I agree with everything that Labour does or everything that Labour says. But you've got to hold the party line. So it's this thing of okay, well, I'm not voting for Gwendolyn Harris. I'm voting for Gwendolyn Harris, Labour MP, because that's what Labour want. And I think it's interesting that that's one of the things that Waldo's sort of calling out. So it doesn't entirely call out party politics, but it's quite clear that sort of seems to be at the heart of it.
Yeah, I mean, the only problem is, let's say that you demolish the existing parties. You can't keep people from forming coalitions.
No, I know.
So I mean, you would very quickly have, a sort of all-out war in the next election or something, but it would very quickly resolve to probably a left and right
Similar.
party,
Yeah, exactly.
and
Yeah.
they just have different names, and and they might be run by who's the by Rupert Murdoch explicitly,
Yeah.
and funded, tied behind some rich dude, um, you know, but you would get back very quickly to where we are now. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I think I find myself in this precarious situation of, on the one hand, being very upset at the attacks on democracy that we have experienced and continue to experience from the right, but also very disillusioned with democracy myself.
Mm.
Um, and, I mean, I don't know what the solution is here any more than you do, but I cannot imagine that, let me put it this way. I can't imagine that somebody um, who has an IQ of 80, or who believes that there's a flat earth, or who can't name the three branches of the United States government, should have a vote, or should be able to vote, or have the same number of votes as everyone else, and should be able to have unlimited right of reproduction. I find that absolutely mad.
Yeah.
And that is a very anti-democratic thing I just said. That is a very, I mean, it's borderline a eugenics statement, and I know that, I acknowledge that, but I don't know what the alternative is, because I want to live in a society that functions better than our societies do now,
Yeah.
and that also provides better for people, which is incompatible with Honey Boo Boo being in a family of 12 who are allowed to play on the railroad tracks. Okay.
Well, what this episode throws in, and doesn't explore, but throws in a technological solution to democracy. It does quite at one point. So Jason Fleming's character, Jack Napier, and I just want to shout out. I always enjoy Jason Fleming when he's in something. Great presence. Played Quatermass at one point. That's a different thing. But he actually says, well, why don't we have it that, we could have a policy of 100% democracy? We'll set up an app, and everything goes to a poll to the public, and you just download this app and you vote whether, yay or nay to a policy, and then that gets enacted, and really give it back to the people. And you think, okay, well, it's sort of done as a sort of a side joke, because it's not sort of pursued anymore, but the technology is there.
It's going to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, it has happened, occasionally in some European countries where they have more referenda on the continent. But I remember in the discussion of Brexit, there was all this discussion of having a second referendum. They said, "Oh no, we can't just honor the votes that have been given." Well, every political experts on political science said, "Oh no, that would be actually more democratic than following through on a previous vote." Anytime you can have an additional referendum, that reflects more updated information and a later point in time, you would want that information, assuming that it might not go the same way. It's worth it. So, yeah, I mean, look, in this country, we have all the stuff that polls at 60 to 80, 90%, including gun control, that we can't get done, right? That app would certainly help us. And yet, I mean, utterly unconstitutional. I mean, you'd have to have a revolution, a constitutional convention before you could get there. But the app also, you can imagine, that's not a perfect system either. I mean, and as presupposed by Black Mirror, I mean, it's going to be run by Waldo's campaigning for press yes.
Oh yeah, no, exactly. Yeah,
press yes, get your free app, your free bear hat for my avatar.
Well, going back to was it the 15 million? What's it? One of the first series, 15 million merits. Similar thing, isn't it? Like you say, for every Tory thing you vote yes to, you will get a new badge. Like you unlock an achievement. Like you've done it, like in Audible do it. Like you've read this many hours this month, get a badge. It wouldn't surprise me. But I would say, from a system point of view, this phone has got face recognition, it's got thumbprint recognition. It could be relatively secure. I mean, granted, you could fall asleep and someone could put the phone in front of your face and then do the vote for you, but I don't know how often that would happen. But there is the opportunity to do that and have it through an app and it be relatively secure. But you're right, you'd be bombarded with messages about what to vote for and what not to vote for. And maybe you only limit what, I wouldn't expect that a vote to go to war would go to an app. Like Britain's going to go to war. We're going to have a poll on a vote whether or not we sort of declare war on Russia. That does not feel like something that should go to a people vote. But how maybe the budget spent, I don't know. There's certain things I think could go through that thing. Start it off with minor things. Start it off with local things. YouGov .uk should have you have an app and you can vote on your district council things. You got 12 councillors, but actually you live in this thing. You can download the Northwest Leicestershire County Council app, and here's all the things they're voting on today or this week. Give us your vote, because you are you have to prove where you live. Like you have to, I don't know, there'll be we do it with everything else. I've got an NHS app that I have to prove who I am, so we could do it. And then you vote on, and then see if it escalates.
Yeah. I mean, when that character says it in this episode, I sort of thought he was talking to piss,
Oh,
like,
he is.
Like how are we going to get there, right? And how is Waldo going to help with that, right? California has a system where it's easy to get ballot initiatives on.
Yes, I've heard about it.
The end result has been terrible because one problem is everybody votes for new stuff that they want. Right. But nobody votes for the tax increases, because if you're like, vote yes to to increase 2% tax on property owners. Well, let's see. I'm a property owner. My parents are property owners.
Yeah.
I don't think I want that. Right. On the other hand, vote to, increase the funding for prisons here. Oh, okay, sure. This is probably on there because they need it. Vote to increase the food allocation for. Oh, that sounds good. So then you have like the budget gets squeezed, and it's like 90% of the budget is determined by all these crazy initiatives now. I mean, it's kind of a mess.
Yes, I have heard about it. But
then again, maybe better than the alternative. I don't know.
Well, sometimes it's worth a try just to keep trying these things. And you say one of the things is we seem to get fixed into a model, and you go, well, we're going to run this for 150 years. That we've had Parliament. Our parliamentary system is no different to how it was when Robert Peel introduced the act that basically created the police in this country. So you're talking like 150 to 200 years. Our parliamentary system hasn't changed, but including the stupid ceremonies and pomp that go with everything. So maybe it is time to try something different. I'm all about blowing up Parliament, the Houses of Parliament, and starting from scratch.
Did you say that?
I just did. I don't know. We'll see who turns up at my door when this episode goes out.
Yeah,
and I'll be sat waiting in my Guy Fawkes mask, ready.
The man who's seen V for Vendetta one too many times. That's another thing is we lionize that, and let's not forget it was a Catholic dictatorship that Guy Fawkes wanted to implement. Okay, so he's not a hero.
No,
but we do kind of reach this, and look, I'm at the same level of frustration where it's like, look, there are these systemic. I said, what are you going to do? You need a revolution or a constitutional convention to implement some basic stuff here. Like, say how the president's elected, like get rid of the stupid electoral college. That sounds great. Why do we have separate, House and Senate if they're both popularly elected? This, doesn't really make sense. Um, you know, Other countries don't do it that way. There are lots of things that we should change. Um, I don't have any hope for them changing, and I don't know what to tell my students who are 20, and who are cynical about it. I can tell them, please vote; it makes a difference. We could have a constitutional convention if we had, two-thirds of the states and both houses, and the president, all of. I would prefer the Democratic Party. I can't see that happening anytime soon.
No.
Um, no, I mean, we have problems.
Yeah.
Having said that, the answer can't be a bear.
Well,
But go ahead.
go on. No, what are you gonna say?
I was going to say I wanted to talk about the ending.
That's exactly what I was going to
Uh,
say. Let's jump to the ending because I wanted to talk about
because
yeah.
yes, so I mean, it's an interesting episode. I mean, I think the weakest point is the computer graphics. That interface that is sort of
Mm.
not aged great, but I think we both like the episode. It gets
Mm.
us thinking. But then at the end, you have this idea that it's kind of heartbreaking, but I think feels very true and right to me that the bear is Waldo is actually owned by the boss, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And he just takes over presenting it, controlling it. And nobody really cares, and the main character, the comedian, becomes homeless in the last shot. And in the meantime, Waldo is farmed out across the world, including to China and governments that we might not approve of, to be used to promote certain
Messaging.
messaging issues in campaigns,
Mm.
right? To encourage people to vote one way or the other, to manipulate them fundamentally, to overthrow democracy, to upset democracy rather than, or prevent it in the case of China, rather than,
Mm.
to promote it. And I think that is similar to the 15 million merits, cynical ending, right? With how it's sort of co-opted.
Yeah.
Um, but it's done in a sort of different way here. So what do you think about that ending and that?
I think that the bits shown between the end credits is better than the immediate lead up. I think this idea of the CIA agent turning up in a shady hotel is a bit played out. But I do like this idea of some organization or corporations seeing the effect that Waldo has had on a small local by-election in the UK and thinking we could scale this up to affect or disrupt the electoral system in another, like a South American country or a Middle Eastern country or a Far Eastern country, where you go, yeah, we're not entirely comfortable with this, the CIA or whoever it is. We're not entirely comfortable with the person who's going to win. So let's have a Waldo kind of thing go on to sort of disrupt this election. Tantamount to rigging it, but like, I know I like this idea. It's that thing of bread and circus, isn't it? Sort of like throwing, and you said about the grenade being thrown in, the bomb throwing. I like it, but the fact that it's clearly grown beyond that, and he's in China, like you say, he's travelled to China, and he's presented with this, with the face of Waldo. I forget what it is he's saying, something like believe or support, obey, sort of kind of thing.
Future. It's all these dumb kind of. It's a whole series where it's like future, believe. These
Yeah,
sort of like slogans.
very
But one word, dumb. Slogans, right? Hope
yeah,
is one.
very
There's a fourth.
what's the Rowdy Roddy Piper film I'm thinking
Oh,
of? John Carpenter film. Oh my god, I've come here to kick ass and chew bubblegum, and I'm all out of bubblegum. God damn it. But it's like that, where he puts on the sunglasses and all of a sudden he there you go, Roddy Piper. They Live. Thank you. They Live.
that's what I was thinking of, and I was like, it can't be. I
Yeah.
haven't seen it.
But he puts on the
staying
sunglasses,
forever.
and all of a sudden he sees all this messaging on these boards, and instead of sort of the
Mm.
actual message, it says like "buy," "sleep," all this other stuff.
Yeah.
So
Well,
yeah, it feels a bit
that
like
I
that.
thought of that fourth word that is being used with Waldo, and it's change. So
Mm,
this is sort of the Obama thing. It's the hope and
mm.
change, right? Like it's an anti-Obama statement, but it's reducing Obama to sort of like that whole poster. And I'll tell you,
But is
I
it?
mean, I'm
It's corrupting that positive message because you're saying, oh,
okay.
it's supporting the Chinese government. Well, it could be actually trying to undermine the Chinese government
It
for
might
for
be if it is
for
the
for
CIA,
yeah for Americans' benefit.
right?
But it is still that corruption of the positive message that Obama was trying to give, that change in hope, as you say.
Yeah, and I will say this. I mean, look, I voted for Bernie Sanders in a primary. Um, I went to a Bernie Sanders rally. Nobody there knew anything about anything. Like it was the most disappointing rally of my life. Because everybody there was like, you know, 20-year-olds who were on their cell phones through the entire speech.
Mm.
And we're just like clearly had no clue about anything except he's going to shake things up and change it. And it was like, wow, like you don't care that he's a socialist, but you're not actually socialist. Like that's beyond you. You know that he's a celebrity. And
Yes.
frankly, there were a lot of people who supported Obama, as I did from, before the primaries. But there were a lot of people who wound up supporting Obama because he was for the hope and change and, he was cool in the poster. And then you say, like, you know, um, what are the specific policies that you're in favor of? And they say, oh, well, uh, decreasing our military presence abroad, and stopping the drones. And you're like, well, actually, Obama said the exact opposite
Yeah.
of both of
Yeah.
those, like, you know, what? So, I mean, there was a sort of hope and change that was commodified even at that time,
Yeah.
and sort of epitomized by that sort of propaganda
But
poster for Obama.
But this goes to what we were saying there. But this is what the right would have done, and they, like say,
Yeah.
will co-opt these things. So it's perfectly acceptable for the right, but the left should do
Mm-hmm.
these things. It's play the game, isn't it? That's the point. It's unfortunately it is politics. You got to play the game to get the attention, to get the clicks, or to get the votes, as it were.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and so you don't get any change unless you take those votes away.
exactly.
Shit,
Yeah.
did I just say that? No, I mean, it's a problem. But you're right. I mean, look, this is a game we're playing, and the left should play it too. And that's look. I mean, it's as jingoistic as flying the flag and having a flag pin on your lapel, and hugging the American flag on stage as if that's something you really do when the cameras aren't there.
Yeah.
I mean, just absolute maddening nonsense that we subject ourselves to all the time in our politics. But yeah, I mean, I like this. I like this ending. I like this commodified version of Waldo. I like how easily it's taken away from that main character, the
Mm.
comedian, and how boy, I mean, it's a little quick. I would like sort of more of that, but how easily it's taken away. Nobody really cares. I mean, it would do wonders to have like a talking head on TV saying, and Waldo's changed voices, but he seems even more belligerent now, and we love him all the more for it.
Yeah.
You go, Waldo, yeah, that sort of thing. And to sort of see maybe some middle ground between walking away from Waldo and being homeless and forgotten on the streets, right?
Mm.
But that gets to like, I mean, even like Paul Rubens, like the second he was out as Pee Wee Herman, nobody cared about him, So I do think there are some deeper messages there.
Oh no, I agree. I think it would be interesting to see what happens with the Labour MP. Really sort of sell that.
Yeah.
Like you say, oh, everyone's forgotten about the comedian that was behind Waldo, but actually, this Labour MP, she's gone on to do really well, and has become a candidate elsewhere, or done something or whatever. Yeah, no, I like the ending. I think the ending it's a good touch. It's a nice touch to show that, especially when it shows it and it's like everywhere. It's not just one billboard. It's like Blue Bear is everywhere. And I like, it's interesting. I think, like you say, because you would then get, you get merchandise and you'd get figures and so on and so forth, all with Waldo on, and it would really saturate, I think, in that way. It does make me wonder, like, are we that far away from political mascots in that same way? I don't know, but I
Have
do
you seen the
wonder
John
about.
Oliver stuff with Japanese mascots
Yes, that was
for
very good.
everything?
Yeah. Yeah, that is very
Like, yeah,
cool.
well, like I'm the Tory tiger,
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
I'm the Labour leopard.
lion. Yeah,
Yeah, that's right.
yeah. There is something to that. I think there's something. It's that
Mm.
performative stuff is there. Whether we'll go that far, I don't know. But the thing is, like I said,
Well,
having. Let's
yeah,
just say
in the
yes.
future, we'll
Go on.
have those animated features, but they'll be like a animated mascot, and they'll be controlled by AI. And
Yes.
then what the AI says, the Labor Lion is going to say. Now that becomes party policy, and everybody just does what the AI does because it's got to get in line.
Well, I was going to say that's the other thing is well that we've talked about AI. That'll be the next thing as
Mm.
AI takes over and actually does become to start. Well, there's a part of you that goes, well, actually, you could program it to remove all human subjectivity. It just goes, actually,
Hmm.
here are the facts, and here's the best track for you to follow for the best human survival. And we end up with all the films and shows that we've talked about from Westworld to The Matrix. But whether it's the right way, I
Yeah,
don't know.
sounds better than where we are now.
Yeah.
I can't wait for my robot overlords. That's what I'm saying.
Another thing about that, we've said this. I'm reading I think it's John Gray. It's a book called The Soul of the Marionette at the
Hmm.
moment, and it's about free will and like this idea of free will. And he argues in it that what we actually strive for and we are evolving towards is the freedom from having to make decisions, and that's the
Mm.
freest that is when we will see ourselves to be completely free, because then we won't have to make decisions, but we will have to sort of give up freedom or those decision making to something else. And obviously AI is the suggestion, not so much in the book, but it's this idea of it says like a ruling elite class that we sort of just give up all our rights to. So it's interesting that could well be robot overlords. We
Well,
shall
we'll
see.
see.
Yeah.
You know, America will be the last one. We'll have our corporate overlords, but you will be able to decide. The color of your skin. I mean, you'll be able to decide. We love choice, and in the dumbest of all possible ways, right? Like, not the choice to have an abortion. That's not, the choice to decide your own health care. That's not really important. But, you need to be able to decide exactly how long your muffler is, or freedom dies. You need to be able to have any gun you want, or freedom dies. When I can't own an anti-tank weapon and eat 40 pounds of hamburger a day, freedom's dead, my brother.
Yeah.
You know, this is the American way. And you also have the freedom to starve to death and die of a preventable disease under a bridge.
Well, that's because you weren't
That's
working. But that's because you weren't working hard enough. You weren't
hey,
giving enough hours to the job you had.
God only gives us what we can withstand. It's an ordered universe, my friend.
Yes. And on that note, that's an inside joke for anyone sort of listening. But anyway, let's round up. Any final thoughts then for the Waldo moment?
Well, I mean, it's we didn't talk enough about the episode, but that's because we were inspired by the ideas and thinking about it. And actually, our politics probably are relatively close to Brooker's. But I think that it is actually a fun episode that gets better as it goes on and ramps up, and I think is a very good episode.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's a strong episode. I enjoy it. I think, like you say, the ideas in this are kind of strong. It's clearly about something and wants to sort of throw those It's not there to create a solution. It's not there giving you an alternative, but it does want to throw shade at the fact that there has been no change and we are due some sort of change. But I love the fact it pulls the rug a little bit and does highlight the fact that the actual system has also given us everything that we have at the moment, good or bad. And so you can't completely dismiss what we have. And so, yeah, I think this is actually, this only gets a 6.8 on IMDb compared to the last one getting an 8. And I was just looking at some of the reviews, and some of the reviews are like, oh, it's stupid, it doesn't quite, and this other stuff. So I think this is a smarter episode.
This is the better episode. It's a
Yeah.
smarter episode. And moreover, both seasons have one political episode.
Yeah.
And I would say this is the better of the two political episodes. You know, for me, the Waldo moment actually, here's one thing, it actually gets at some politics and how the system works. And yes, it's broken, but the national anthem is kind of a one-trick pony that doesn't really have anything to say about politics except, golly gee, politicians will do anything.
Yeah, but it doesn't really say that either, did it? It's just basically this guy will fuck a pig because the Queen tells him to. That was sort of what it boils down to. Anyway, yes. No, I agree. I think it's a good episode. And the next episode is the first special, which we'll be getting to in the next episode. So,
John Hamm, no less.
Yes, this is where after this special, the special I watched. This is when I sort of dropped off. So we're getting into uncharted territory now, really. I've watched the bits and pieces, but not much. So really looking forward to going forward beyond this point. Very excited. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen,
looking forward to it.
Yeah, if you enjoy what we're doing with Black Mirror, go check out our other episodes happening alternate weeks, trekking through the Twilight Zone. Julian and I are dissecting each of the episodes of the original Twilight Zone series. On the main feed, you have the original season from the 60s, and also on the Patreon, which we'll try to get to, we have up to season 3. We've done all the first 3 seasons at this point, so go check out that as well. Lots of sort of Twilight Zone, as well as the additional stuff we're doing on the main feed. We've done Transformers and Hard to Be a God and Christ, a load of other stuff as well. And we've got a bunch of other stuff planned for the next season. So go check that out. There's a link down below. But we appreciate
BBC Hitchhikers on there too.
Yes. Yeah, TV version of Hitchhikers. But yes, anyway, for now, thank you very much for listening. Thank you for the discussion today, Julie. It's been a good one. So I've enjoyed this. But yeah, thank you very much, everyone. And we shall see you on the next episode.
There's something very important I forgot to tell you.
What?
Don't cross the streams.